when I'm painting, I'm hearing music in my head. When I'm listening to music, I'm seeing the visual, and just the day-to-day, moment-to-moment joy that I get from colors, from color therapy, from art, and seeing the wider world, the people, the architecture, the nature. I feel like that's really the essence of my spirit and who I am, is trying to have vision.
She is a label head, a prolific songwriter, singer, and artist.
She's also a visual artist and ballet dancer.
And has shepherded diverse artists through the music sphere.
Rachel Sage joins us on today's episode.
My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of.
I believe with every beating of my heart, if the world were run by women, there would be an end to war. There would be an end to suffering at the hands of hatred shards. There would be no more buttressing of the vengeance violence starts.
Hello. My God, I feel like it's been so long since I've seen you. Pete, just to give you a little backstory.
Yeah, what's your backstory?
So I don't even know how long ago it was. Rachel and I were part of an ASCAP workshop, and we met and we instantly became friends. And I started doing backups for you almost pretty soon after, right?
It was pretty quick, yeah.
It was pretty quick. And it's really funny. We just did an interview with Celia Chavez, and we were talking about blending and the art of blending, because she's been touring with Pink and Enrique Iglesias and all these people. And one of the things I have to say, because I never was a good blender, and I really realized, oh my God, the whole time I was working with you, like I never really understood how important it was to blend. Now, you never were hardcore about that, and we were so loose, but like how different it could have been if I had really been working on blending with you.
That's
but our sounds are so different anyway.
They are, but
right?
I think that's what I loved, because I was obsessed with Indigo Girls at the time. And Amy and Emily have such different voices.
Oh,
and
interesting.
yet they sound so beautiful together. So, you know, I was very eager to let both of our voices shine. And I thought that was a lot of the beauty of it. So
yeah, that's interesting. And you know, it's funny. I never thought about it because it was such a different time in music, you know.
That's true. Yeah.
Where are your backup voices coming from nowadays?
That's a great question.
Because you're on tour. You are out there. You are busy.
You are nonstop.
I guess so. I don't know. I get more tired when other people remind me what I'm doing, you know, and then I think about it and go, oh,
Same.
wait, what am I doing? What am I thinking?
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was my job. Sorry. Yes, you're right. I'm working too hard to pay my rent. Sorry.
Well, let's see. I do a lot of them myself on recordings. And then once in a while, I recruit someone local to me here in the Hudson Valley. The wonderful Americana duo Annalise and Ryan have appeared on a handful of my albums. And then a couple of members of my current group, The Sequins, also happen to sing fabulously. So Kelly Halloran on violin also sings.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I don't know if you remember Trina Hamlin from back in the day.
I don't remember her from back in the day, but I know her name for ages.
Yeah, she plays harmonica and she sings. She has a very deep, rich voice, kind of like you. So it all works out.
Well, it's funny because your voice, sorry, Pete, your
Yes.
voice, it has gotten a lot deeper. Is that because you were sick, or is that where your voice is at right now? Because you always had a much higher...
Oh, not for many years. I think my voice probably went through a bit of a change, maybe 10, 15 years ago, where I just kind of abandoned all my high soprano-ness and leaned in harder to, you know, the man in me. But really, those had been all my favorite singers growing up were a lot of those types of deep voices. You know, Mark Cohn, of course. I don't know. It was interesting. Today, I was trying to reach some super high notes, and I found it really difficult. And then when I had to go do some harmonies that were really low, it was really fun.
So it was a conscious choice.
I guess a little bit, yeah. And then also time and age, I feel like my voice naturally has definitely deepened a lot.
Yeah, it's very rich.
Are you Are you born
It's
and
all
raised?
those candy cigarettes. Yeah,
Are
go
you
ahead,
born and
Pete.
raised in the Hudson Valley? Is that where you're
No,
from?
I was raised in different parts of Connecticut and New York. I was actually born in Port Chester, New York, home of the original Sam Ash, I believe. So, where I picked up my
Hmm. Rest
first
in peace.
synthesizer. I know. Although I don't know if you read that B&H is taking over the Sam Ash space. They're just
Oh, the
ever
one on
expanding.
34th Street, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if they're making that a music space, though. Do you think? they're-
Totally, it's just a tangent. I just
Yeah,
read that.
I know. It's like,
you know.
what else do they need? It's such a big place already.
I
so
know.
how does somebody who is, your satellite is, you're based in the Hudson Valley, but you've got shows like in Brighton, in the UK, Brighton.
Yes.
How does that happen? How do you get shows in other countries? And Brighton is great. I'm sure you've been
Sure.
there before. It's
Oh,
a
I
great
love it.
place. It seems like from what I've seen of your work, it seems like it would probably go very well over there. I will
And
send
I'm
my
sh-
friends to see it as well.
I was going to say, it seems like you have a kinship with it as well, just
do.
from the tone in your voice. But
do.
yeah, I think it's like the, downtown New York is to Manhattan as Brighton is to the broader London area. So
Yeah.
super fabulous, super LGBTQ plus.
Super vegetarian.
Exactly.
Don't go swimming there. The rocks and the water are horrendous.
Good advice.
Ouch.
I don't swim, but I will remain a
You don't
non-swimmer.
swim.
No, I don't like it. It's another topic, but I don't mind a good long hot shower. But don't ask me to go in the ocean. Anyway, I did.
How are you booking shows in this place that you're not swimming in?
Well, I have been touring a lot more in the UK actually for the last over 10 years
Yeah.
than in the US. So
How?
funnily enough, the same way, but my audience there has expanded and just been more enthusiastic, you might say, on a
Yeah.
larger scale than the US. But the process is absolutely the same. You cast lines to venues, you try to book a tour, you go over there maybe the first time and you're working with promoters or not, and you're just kind of making a go of it. So I laid that groundwork over a decade ago, and it wasn't with any big fanfare or anything. I think I booked myself into the Troubadour and the Green Note and a handful of other places, just like I had done prior to that in Germany, actually. Just real grassroots, nitty gritty, van breaking down by the side of the road.
Sure.
All the things that give you character. Cut to a few years after that, you meet the odd agent, they come and go, but you hold on to some of those venue contacts. And it's kind of been that type of a process. More recently, I've supported a lot of bigger artists there, which has been very helpful
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
And you just try to win those hearts and minds.
And how
Yeah.
did you get those gigs with the bigger artists?
Very similar. And I do the same thing in the US too, but with not quite as prolific a results because it's just so much bigger here. But I am not afraid to send an unabashedly enthusiastic self pitch. And I try to think of it from the other person's perspective.
Good.
And I think being a label head helps me to do that maybe a little bit more easily than some other of my peers. But I'll just, point blank say the venues I've played before, the following that I have in each place, what type of radio support I've had, why I think I'm a good match with this artist, and just sort of
That's really smart.
make a little ebullient legal case for why I would be the perfect support for these upcoming shows.
You said
And
you're a label head?
I am, yeah.
What does that mean? What is a label
Well,
head?
it means that I've been running a record label for
Quite some time.
almost 30 years.
Wow.
I know, isn't that
Wow.
crazy?
Yeah.
So
Empress
And what does that
Records.
mean to the people who don't know? I mean, of course, I know
Sure.
everything about it. I just want to help our listener.
yes. Well, what that means is way before everybody ran a record label, I took that leap of craziness around 1996, I guess. And initially, I was just putting a logo that I made on my own CDs and calling it a record label. And then the years went by. I ended up getting distribution, being able to get my CD in different retail stores. Remember them back
Yeah,
in the
what?
day?
So you have to have a label for your stuff to get into a CD store, pretty much.
Well, back
right?
then you did.
Back
Yeah.
then, yeah.
Now you
Now it
really
doesn't
don't.
matter.
But
Oh.
back
Well,
then,
now because
I
everything's online, pretty
that's
much.
right. Totally different landscape. Physical was queen.
Yeah.
at that point. And Nancy and I
like that
we
was
remember, going to Tower Records and waiting in line to get some artist who we love to sign something. Like Kate Bush signed the Red Shoes for me, and Sting
Do you
signed.
know I never did that? I never
never did
waited
that?
in line for anyone to sign anything.
Well, I lived across the street, so
Right.
I was able to be lazy about it. I would sort of see from my window that the line was waning, and then did you ever play? You did, right? You played in-store performances there. Did you ever
At
do
Tower?
That?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I
they-
never
they-
played at Tower Records.
They had a. I'm surprised because they did embrace the one near us on Lower
We're talking
Broadway.
about the one by NYU, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They embraced a lot of independent artists at a certain point, and it became fairly accessible to just, knock on the door of the guy who booked that. And again, make a case that you could bring 50 people, 50 of your friends to play there and do a promotion for your album. So
Yeah, see, I wasn't able to play solo at that time.
Got
and So
it.
I had the whole band. I had the whole Nancy Magrill and the Herd.
Right.
And then,
Oh, such a
right, it
great
was
group.
always a band thing. So I never, ever did anything like that until I
Yeah.
started doing some tours and moving when I moved overseas and then started playing different places.
It's
So
like
with your-
herding cats, right?
Yeah.
Literally wrangling
It's
people
so
to all
crazy.
show up and to rehearse and all of it. So
With your label now, what is it called?
it's called Empress Records. And somewhere in there around maybe 15 years ago, I signed my first other artist,
Yeah.
Seth
Congrats.
Lear. who
Oh, I
was-
remember that.
Yes.
That was when I had Label Free Radio.
That's
Right?
right.
Yeah.
And I think he's right up your alley. Just a beautiful singer songwriter with a really expansive range and kind of in the James Taylor, Bruce Springsteen realm. Really, really interesting guy. And he also produces and does films. So, a polymath for sure. And then as that progressed, I signed a handful of other artists like Melissa Farrick, a band called Fragile Tomorrow, comprised of three brothers, and two of them actually were advocates for cerebral palsy. They have CP and just amazing guys. So we really embrace music and musicians with a story and a lot more to them than just writing songs, but the songs have to be great. And then as people, we want to know that they're also just amazing people who are giving back to the community and, people we'd want to drive with on long tour stretches and have
Yeah.
over to dinner.
I just saw Ryan Haddad on at Playwrights Horizon. He's
Oh, wow.
He's an actor who has cerebral palsy, and it was really fascinating. Like great stories. It seems like they need to connect somehow.
Yes,
It'd be
definitely.
really interesting
And
to bring them together.
it would be. Let's
Did
yenta
these-
it up.
Did these people who you are, is it repping? Is that the right word?
It's a
For-
great
under your
word,
label?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are these people who you're
I
repping
guess.
under your label, did they find you? Or did they write you enthusiastic emails the way you wrote emails? And,
It's
How
funny
do
you
you-
should say that.
I think it was ebullient.
It's it's been a mix. I would say 50-50. There was an artist, there is an artist named Grace Pettis who's phenomenal, and I'm obsessed with her music. She has a very gritty kind of Sheryl Crow sort of a voice, and then she writes country, Americana, beautiful folk songs. And I heard her perform at South by Southwest, but in a very intimate setting, an unofficial party. And just her and a guitar blew me away. And my tour manager, Meredith, is kind of a right hand to me in the label. And we just looked at each other knowingly going, okay, how do we collaborate with this superstar? She's amazing. And then she turned out to be the nicest, most down-to-earth sweet person and really wants some support. And then on the flip side, the boys in A Fragile Tomorrow, they're men now, but they were boys then. Actually, some of them were in their teens. And
I like how she went, they're men now.
yes, oh yes, manly men.
In her man voice.
They were already pursuing it professionally as professional kids and teens. They were homeschooled. They were driving around in a van, playing gigs, like Hanson.
Oh my God, that's
So to me,
sweet.
that was incredibly inspiring because,
Yeah.
of course, I would have loved to have gone away with this proverbial circus at their age, but did not have the right parents for that endeavor. So, they came to me. I thought that they needed some development, and it was exciting in that way. So a very different scenario. We sat down at Think Coffee in the East Village, and I was just kind of like, well, what do you want to do? How can we help? That's very flattering. You came to us. What specifically, are your goals? And then once we figured out they were pretty well aligned, that was able to move forward. So it's really varied through the years. And Kay's Choice, we released, I don't know if y'all remember their song Not an Addict from the 90s, but it was one of my favorite rock songs, kind of akin to Veruca Salt and Nirvana, just very edgy and rock. So that was out of the norm of our style. But I said, what the heck, just because it's going to scare my parents doesn't mean I shouldn't sign them.
That means you should sign it
There
just
you
for
go.
that reason.
That's it.
How do you balance your career as an artist and theirs? Or, presuming they're all touring as well? Or
Yes.
How do you balance that?
That's a great question. Well, we're not management, so we're not micromanaging their touring per se. We're not booking their gigs, and we're not managing the day-to-day of, let's say, for example, their finances from their tour income or, other things they may be doing in music. We're just their label. So, I say just, but of course that involves a lot of things.
yeah.
So we're shepherding them through the demo process, the A&R curation for their albums or their singles, overseeing potential videos that will be using that Empress Records released audio, but maybe not their TikTok videos. That's on them, So anything that uses those master recordings that we're helping them realize and executive produce, in effect.
Right.
That's the extent of our involvement. And then there have been a handful of artists who have completed their albums and brought them to us completely finished, and we just love them as they were. So we've licensed their records. For instance, James Mastro, who you may know, a guitar player who plays with Ian Hunter and just a lot of rock artists, Alejandro Escovedo. And he'd played on my own albums for years and years. So when he came to me with his own completed rock album, I was pleasantly surprised. I just didn't even know he'd been working on it. I was like, what? Rock star? Like, yeah, let's put this out together, because it really, it checked all the boxes for us. Great songs, great performances. The odd quote from someone like Patti Smith never hurts when you're promoting a record.
Right.
Who are your well, I have to ask, we tend to be talking lately to people who have been around very famous people.
Yeah, that's
Who's your famous person? Who's your
Oh my gosh.
I had this experience.
No.
Rachel has many.
No, I don't
Okay,
know about
just
that.
Give me a good one.
I gravitate toward the more obscure. Nancy knows that. I really
Yeah.
do. And I think you're similar. We like to discover and find people that then years later are huge. And we're like, what? We knew them at the Sidewalk Cafe. So I guess an example of that would be, this isn't a very embarrassing story.
Yay!
Oh,
Years
yay.
ago,
My
a
favorite.
friend of mine, maybe you know him, Randy Crafton, a wonderful percussionist
No.
who toured for years with, oh my gosh. Do you ever just forget names?
Yeah.
We'll come back
That's
to that.
called old age.
Yeah,
Yes.
we edit it in. No one knows
Okay.
we forget
Okay,
anything.
great. But
Oh,
he
you mean I have
brought-
to edit this now?
I'm sorry.
No,
you don't
I
have to.
I always edit it.
We can be real. So he brought me a cassette by a young woman
A cassette.
named Regina Spektor.
Oh my God, I love Regina.
I love her too.
Oh, she's
And he
so great.
said, take a listen to this. It's just a demo. I'm curious what you think. This is years and years ago, before she toured with the Strokes and really got to the next level. And I don't know what demo it was. It certainly wasn't anything I ended up loving and being obsessed with later as a fan. But it didn't really connect with me, whatever
You
it was.
passed on Regina Spektor.
Sort of. She doesn't know that I passed
Right.
her. So he
She
brought
does
me
now.
this demo, and my comment at the time was, I really love this, but it reminds me too much of Fiona Apple, and there already is a Fiona Apple. In hindsight, I actually don't think Regina Spektor sounds anything like
Nothing
Fiona Apple.
like- yeah,
so
I
it must
agree.
have just been something about this demo that maybe someone else had produced. And you know how that goes when we haven't just quite found our own sound of how we love to make records. And that's what that was. And so it just kind of ended up in a pile. That's the embarrassing one. But
That's so interesting, though, because, I guess I didn't think of it in that time period that you would have had an opportunity to even have artists at that, like Regina Spektor, coming to you. Like, it
She
makes
was-
But
total
she
sense.
wasn't Regina Spektor
No,
at that point.
Yes, she was.
she was
She
playing
always
like the
was,
open
though,
mic
but
at the
yes, I know what you're
Sidewalk
saying.
Cafe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say open mic
course.
at the Sidewalk and having
Yeah.
a cassette.
But it's so great. Like, you're right, because we are surrounded in New York City. We've all had, I did a gig at Mercury Lounge, and Jennifer Charles was opening, or maybe I was opening for Jennifer Charles is probably more like it. And Jeff Buckley was right there in the green room with me. Yeah, he actually came to Chenet, Cafe Chenet, a couple of times when I played, because she was a waitress there.
Oh, I remember. I was probably there.
Yeah.
Because I remember him just being around, and we all played shows there, and he was going to play in a couple hours at 11 or whatever.
And he was
we were
just
on at
always
9.
around. And I remember I actually said something to him. Oh, and I used to rehearse next to him on 54th Street. There was a 54th Street on the west side. There was a old recording rehearsal studio, and his band used to rehearse next to me right before he was a big star. And then he took off right at that time, and then I saw him at the Mercury Lounge, and I said something to him, and I was like, oh my God, I'm such a fan. And he disappeared. He wouldn't talk to me the rest of the night.
Oh, no.
He was so uncomfortable with people
being recognized.
And it was such a shame, because I'd seen him everywhere,
Nancy, I'm just having a memory of, we often talk about how we know each other, and it's always like so weird. It's from the cabaret world. It's from Mike Kyoto. It's from Everett Bradley. It's from, but I believe one time I went to a concert at that very tiny cramped back room at the Sidewalk, and you were there, but you were sitting really close to the musician, and you were going, sit here, and I was like, it's too close, I can't.
Did I know you then?
Yeah, it must have been very
the Sidewalk with Latch,
early on in our relationship.
I don't remember knowing you that long ago.
I know what you mean about the closeness, though. That stage.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, your cocktail seat was like,
I mean, that is
on
if
the
you
stage.
have, I've also been to shows there where there's 5 people, so,
Right.
I
I once
like the
had a
bitter end
djembe
is like that.
Oh, go ahead, say it. The bitter end, yes.
Yeah.
I once had a djembe stolen out from under my nose at the edge of the stage at the Sidewalk Cafe while I was slightly turned left at the upright piano.
Wait, and it was on stage?
It was, like just on the stage, right next to the center mic. And
No
someone
way.
just swiped it and walked out with it. Crazy,
Holy
right?
shit.
Because the place was so tiny, and there were
So
people
tiny.
like sitting on the floor, sitting at the
And
tables.
nobody saw
Yeah.
it and stopped them?
No. It was
Oh my
just-
God, that's
yeah.
crazy.
It
I
was
just keep
probably just
thinking
some
of
hippie.
they had $3 margaritas there. That's what I keep thinking about.
I have to
Nice.
say, I don't think I ever, maybe I played Sidewalk Cafe once, but I loved playing the small, intimate clubs. Like Cafe
Yeah.
Chenet to me
it was the
was
best.
such a joyous place to play, because you just were there with people. Like there's something, like we were just talking to Celia about these big arena shows that she's playing and how great that is and what that feels like. But there is something about being in the same room with people where you're right there connecting with them.
Yep.
That's so magical. I mean, Pete, you've also played, like I remember the first time I saw your Lance show was down in the basement around Penn Station
Yep.
somewhere.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was so intimate and amazing. And I love that. I think there's a real balance that happens between those kinds of shows.
I feel like I learned about that intimacy stuff when I started going to the UK a lot and just seeing like how they use back rooms of bars and
Yes.
front rooms of bars and front, storefronts, just weird places. And I feel like America, at least back then, wasn't as hip to, going
I know
to
what you
something
mean.
that,
or it's relegated to cabaret only here.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas, and interestingly, I'm often asking the lighting person in a slightly larger room to put a little bit of light on the first few rows so I can see human beings and kind of pretend it's more cabaret a little bit, or
Yeah.
just more intimate. Because when you're in a small space, you see everyone in the room. You can really play to that person in the 7th row and the 8th row and the 1st row, and we're all in one space. And in a much bigger venue, like your last interviewee you were mentioning,
Yeah.
that can be sometimes a little bit isolating even. I get more nervous when I can't see anyone. Like when it's
Absolutely.
complete
I'm
blackness.
exactly the same. You have to
I
have
have
the
to
house
just
lights up.
Imagine
We
a
have to
couple of
be-
besties in the front row.
Do you always have people in the front row like lip syncing along or singing along? Like, and is that like, are you able to not watch them or?
That's the best if you have that. My
You like
goodness.
that?
Of course. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll even joke. I'll put, kind of put them on the spot and say, don't mind me if I change the lyrics. I know you know them. But I like to improvise. So this
Do you?
third verse may be different from what you. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'd say about, 30-40% of what I do nowadays in my show is improvised musically, just in terms of the way that I play piano and some arrangement things. And I don't ever write a set list. And I work with people who
Wow.
know the repertoire. And
Wow.
That's interesting because I find, and I think you're very similar. You and I both work very hard on a lyric. Like lyrics, there's some people that could give a crap about lyrics. Lyrics matter. And you and I have talked about this before. Lyrics really matter to me.
that should
So
be a t-shirt for us.
Right? Lyrics matter. But I feel like I don't know if I ever could then rewrite one of my songs in a live show. Like I don't.
Well,
I would have a really hard time.
It's
with that,
more
I think.
like there are interchangeable go-to words that I might
okay.
sort of mix up. And then musically, for sure, I'm going to noodle out on the piano in a different way every time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and sometimes the word improvise is interchangeable with forget.
I was
So
just
that-
going to say that.
But then you're spontaneously rewriting. Is what you're
Yeah,
doing.
I've had that when people come to like one of my solo shows. They're like, "Oh, you cut that part about the blah blah blah," and I go, "No, I just forgot it." And I'm glad you remembered that one part, though.
And the beautiful thing is, though, most people don't even know most of the time.
Of course,
you know.
yeah.
Only you know really when you forget a lyric or something,
That's
or you
right.
mess up, and it's human to mess up. You know?
Where did this?
I love that. Yeah.
Where did this ability to play instruments come from, and even music? Like, what were your influences,
Okay,
Rachel
here
Sage?
we go. Rolling up my proverbial sleeves here.
You're
And-
wearing
and
Rachel's wearing a fantastic
Oh,
yellow
very
knit
Eastery, I
sweater
guess.
that has daisies on it with
Happy
just
spring.
the top button buttoned.
marking the end of Passover with where we can eat carbs again with my
Yeah, it's the
sweater.
traditional marking the end of Passover by buttoning the top button of your knit
That's
sweater
it,
day.
yeah.
I'm going to pretend I
It's okay.
followed Passover.
I did it for you.
Thank you.
I'm always happy to deprive myself on behalf of anyone else. But we digress. I love your humor, both of you. We get each other. So the caveat before I answer this question is that if I knew how I not quote, mastered, but really learned to play piano, I would clone that process and apply it to 17 other instruments I wish I could play. The reality is it was a very natural process growing up. I happened to have a piano in my home in the living room that my very not musical parents just had the foresight and the good sense
Furniture.
to have. Yeah,
But they're
it's like-
artistic. They're
they're creative, yeah. And my parents love music. They love Broadway. They love doo-wop, and my dad loved the Beatles. They were two different sides of the same coin, which is to say that they both loved melody. If it was a song they could hum with a good tune, that became sort of the barometer of early encouragement with their, just strange daughter who took to the piano with no lessons. They didn't really understand it, but they'd say, "Oh, honey, that's a good tune. Write another one like that." Or like,
Oh my
"I don't know,
gosh.
that's not such
They
a
really
good tune."
didn't understand it?
No,
I
So
find
they-
that shocking.
absolutely not. So they would be like, "Well, sweetheart, I don't know, but it seems like Billy Joel uses both hands." Or like, you don't have to always be at the bottom all the time. Why don't you play the top two? You're like, so there were sort of like macro encouragements / criticisms that were very like Jewish stage parenty without them being musicians or understanding music really, where they were nonetheless encouraging that I should someday be a composer. They heard me noodling with one hand in a catchy way or pounding out a beat with the left hand, and they were kind of like, "All right, sweetheart, put it all together." Dance, monkey, dance.
And did you have a cassette player and you recorded yourself and I'm
Yes.
thinking we're all from the same era.
We are. I've confirmed it on Wikipedia. Yes.
I'm from the tape recorder era.
Totally. And proud to be so. Yeah, around 11, 12 years old, there started to be some discussion in my extended family, actually, who would only convene on holidays like Passover. Maybe we should get her a 4-track for her bat mitzvah.
Hanukkah.
Yeah, maybe. But the bat mitzvah was the big one where you got
Right.
the big gift that everybody pitched in on. So instead of, I don't know what it would have been, a set of, Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever, they all decided that I should be getting a 4-track. And I really didn't have the, kind of the big picture yet to understand what that was or why I would end up loving it. When it first arrived in a box, I was actually kind of deflated, like, this doesn't seem like a present. You know what I mean?
This isn't
like
a bat mitzvah gift.
This is electronics. Like, don't I get a necklace? Like it was just weird.
Yeah.
And I'm such a femme. I'm such a girly girl that even back then, present to me meant like something sparkly and pretty and colorful.
You are.
Just wrangled with this piece of equipment, and I'm not naturally very technical. And I really wrestled with it for days and days. And finally I figured out, like these 2 Fostex mics and these 2 speakers, but turn them off when I put the headphones and stick this mic by the
Press
piano.
this button.
Exactly.
Right.
And eventually I started making demos at the piano with this 4-track. And as you can imagine, when I figured out how to bounce tracks, that was
That was
What
the
does that
coolest, right? Oh my God.
that's like what the Beatles did.
Do you want to explain how you
No,
bounced
you
them
can
on-
explain.
Okay.
You're actually more technical than me.
If I can remember exactly how
Yeah.
to do it with a tape recorder, what you would do is you would press record on the one track you wanted to record to, and then you'd hit the other 2. You'd have to send them over a certain way. I can't even remember.
It was like AUX, aux.
Yeah, maybe it was an aux. I don't remember.
Aux send, and
You
they're
would
all
just have to send them. So you'd push play on 2 tracks and send and record on another.
Right.
Like it was all this. Remember how Jen Munson was talking about splicing and splicing old tape? It was
Same
the same
era.
kind of.
I did that
kind
too.
Of thing. You just did all these workarounds to get.
Yeah.
To have, you would take 2 tracks onto one, so then you'd have those other 2 tracks.
But you could do that
record
again and
something else.
again.
Right.
You'd start to get a lot of noise buildup, a lot of hiss.
Yeah.
But I felt like I could be Kate Bush. I could have 10 of
Exactly.
me singing the same part, and suddenly I was in my own choir. And so that was very satisfying, and the beginnings of me wanting to be a music producer, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm sensing some what's the word? Just nerd. There's some nerddom here. So
no doubt.
Okay, all right, great. So your high school years, were you like the weird kid who went home and wrote music and I was like, what is she doing? Or were you auditioning for Oklahoma?
You
Great
were a
question.
ballet dancer, weren't you?
I was
Oh,
both. Yeah,
how
I
did
did
that
both.
fit in? Oh my gosh.
But it's funny you mentioned Oklahoma, because Oklahoma was the first Broadway show my mom took me to, and I was 3 or 4. And I came home, and that was the thing that prompted me to start playing piano by ear, was Oklahoma.
Oh.
God bless Oklahoma.
Wow.
And to this day, I'm just so grateful I was brought to that show. And I banged that out with the right hand, high, probably the last octave on the piano, legs dangling off the bench. And that's when my parents were like,
God.
what is she doing? Like, what do we have on our hands here? And that was the beginning. So, but high school, I really wasn't a musical theater person at all. Unlike Nancy,
Yeah.
I did not have this kind of rich vibrato, semi-operatic ability at that age. I mean, I still don't, but
They didn't make musicals for your voice back then.
No, now they do.
do.
Yeah,
Now
now
they do.
I could have been in Rent or something, but they weren't doing that. There was a gal named Laura Vecchione, who is now a wonderful singer-songwriter.
I know that
She
name.
went to my high school, and she got the leads in all the musicals because she was like 14, and she sounded like she was 45. She just was like, and could do anything. So I did all the straight plays, ironically, did all the Shakespeare and, the high school version of the Chekhov play or whatever. I fancied myself a young Meryl Streep. And then I would go home and make the demos. And then I also, like Nancy said, I was studying ballet pretty seriously then. So,
Yeah.
I was like a little
You were a little weirdo art
crazy,
kid.
weirdo, artsy kid.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
What would you? This is a question I haven't asked in a very long time on this very popular podcast. With my mom. What? She loves it every morning. She loves it. What would you? Okay, 2 questions. 1, you're at a party, you don't know anybody. Someone says, "Hey, Rachel, what do you do?" What's your answer?
Now I have to remember what I'm like at a party.
It's been so long.
I support that
Yeah.
answer.
No, I would say I'm a composer and a visual artist and a poet. Yeah.
Okay. And
I
then,
usually leave out record label
Record
owner
label
business because if I'm at a party, what I would ask someone else generally is, what's your passion?
What?
Because
Really?
I
I'm
like
very,
that.
I'm very sensitive to the fact that most people don't necessarily get to do their passion for their day job. Almost everyone I know doesn't get to. So.
Yeah.
What
Wow.
I'm more interested in what they do on a Sunday on the weekend that they get enjoyment from. So yeah,
I
that's
have
me at a party.
no idea how I would answer that question at the party. And then my second question is, you cannot do anything related to the arts, okay? You're not allowed anything. What else are you going to do?
Kill myself. I mean, really.
Wow.
I don't know. I'm not good at anything else.
Nancy, that we just found our clip. We just found our clip to promote the podcast.
Yeah.
No, but I don't want to. I don't want
No,
to
no,
say
no.
that. It's
No, no, no.
terrible. We do not
No,
promote
no.
that.
Yeah.
But I have thought about this with respect to two things, and I'll get serious here for a minute. You know, there are a lot of eye diseases that run in my family, so the possibility of me someday having much less vision than I have now, which is not so great now, is very real. And I've thought often, what would be more difficult for me, to lose my hearing or to lose my vision? And surprisingly, I think losing my vision would be much more painful for me because I think of everything visually. I even think
Yeah.
of music visually. When my hands go on the piano, I'm making shapes. How I learn to make melodies is from the shapes I see. When I kind of have synesthesia, I don't know if I clinically do, but I feel like I do, where when I'm painting, I'm hearing music in my head. When I'm listening to music, I'm seeing the visual, and just the day-to-day, moment-to-moment joy that I get from colors, from color therapy, from art, and seeing the wider world, the people, the architecture, the nature. I feel like that's really the essence of my spirit and who I am, is trying to have vision, you know?
Wow. That's a really good answer. And there's some
Great
of your
answer.
artwork behind you right now. I believe it looks
Abyssal,
like what I
a little
recognize.
bit. Yeah, not too much.
I looked at your artwork, which is also on your site. We must have been separated at birth because we're with both those people that it's like, what do you do? What don't you do? Actually, that's the question they ask.
I don't drive.
And I'm like, don't worry, I'm bad at
And
a
I
lot
don't
of things.
cook. I don't cook
okay.
and I don't drive.
All
I am a
right.
terrible normal person.
Oh, okay, great. But I looked at your artwork, and your artwork looks like music. It doesn't look like you're reading
thank
music.
you.
It looks musical. There's something
Appreciate that.
vibrant, like you want to see it like you want to see it on a 12-year-old shirt, you know, like I don't know why I picked
that's
the 12-year-old.
best.
But yeah, it just looks like, oh, that's like a happy kid, or there's a happy spirit wearing that shirt.
I appreciate
You know what's
that.
funny about your artwork? I have some
I love
stuff
your
that's-
artwork, by the way. I will
some
just
of
say.
it's very
Yes.
similar, but the difference, and this is, I think, so much the difference between the two of us. Yours is vibrant, bright, these beautiful colors. Mine is black and white. It's all black
Which
and
I
white.
love. Yeah.
And I love
Drawings,
it too.
very fine, very
Abs-
detailed.
Yes.
Look at the two of you next to each other on this podcast right now.
I
You're like
started-
salt and pepper.
It's true. I love that.
Well, I also have, and I feel bad for Pete because I never get dressed when we're on these. I always wear the same. I come in my door, everything comes off, and I put on my lounge pants and a t-shirt. And that's all. Like, I will never get dressed. So I actually was dressed when I came home, and I took everything
You've
off.
got a chandelier over your head, Nancy,
I know. Do
so
you, know,
you
who-
win.
Do you remember Kim
It's
Wayman?
beautiful.
So do you remember
Yes.
Kim Wayman? That she
do.
made that.
It's
so
stunning. I
Kim
love
and
it.
I don't even know how you guys can see it.
I'm obsessed with chandeliers, so
So Kim Wayman and I were good friends for a while, and I went with her to her house in New Jersey, and this was up in like the middle of nowhere, and I was like, "Oh my God, I love that!" And she's like, "Take it." She's like, "It's just sitting here." So I brought it into my apartment, and I reached out to her during the pandemic, and we had gotten in contact. And then I lost contact with her again. And then I found out that she's passed away.
oh no,
Yeah.
that's so sad.
I know. And it's so crazy. And I'm
But
like,
how
and
touching that you have this.
I have this
reminder of her.
amazing piece
Yeah.
of art that she made. And she made this.
That's incredible.
Yeah, she
Well,
put this
another time you'll
together.
have to give me a zoomed in, tour of that piece. 'cause
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
It's incredible. And it makes this apartment look so regal and so European, actually. I love it. Yeah.
I can't help but
Yay.
think. I always give people on our podcast an assignment.
He does.
Oh boy.
It's his new
I
thing.
still have
that-
homework
It's
PTSD
so
from school.
weird. No, but I'm like saying like, oh, like how do we do like some kind of visual art installation that's about chandeliers and what do they mean and how do they relate to music? And...
I have an album called Chandelier.
All right, well you've already done it.
But-
Assignment, you get
No,
an A+.
but I never drew them and I never painted them. And I agree with you. That would be an amazing embodiment of what's magical about them. Yeah.
But before, because we're getting close
Okay,
to time, and I
sure.
want to bring this up. You have a new record coming out, which we haven't talked
I
about.
do, yes.
And is the record called Canopy?
It is called Canopy, yes.
Tell us about it.
Sure, thank you. The title track, Canopy, is coming out May 9th. That much I know. And it is about inclusivity and safety and just trying to, in whatever way we possibly can as individuals and collectively, create that space for other people to feel like they can be fully themselves, be safe, and be who they are. So that's kind of the theme of this album in a lot of ways. And obviously, you know, when I wrote it,
Good timing.
there was a lot going on, but not quite as much
Yeah.
as there is now.
Yeah.
So funny how music can be like that, right?
Yeah.
Well,
you are a sage. You've already thought
Well,
of it before.
oh, I like that. I mean, it is. Look, I wrote a song. I've written many songs years ago that I cannot believe are still relevant today. They're, you know, just about what's going on. And it kills me. And Amy Ziff had said this recently. She's like,
I love her so
I can't
much.
believe it's 2025 and we're still having to fight for the same things all over again. And I think it's, you know,
Amen to
but
that, yeah.
but music, we have music for a revolution. Like we have the gift, and we have to do what we can to try to push it
It's
along.
true. I forget that exact Bernstein quote, but our mutual friend Dave Agar, the wonderful cellist, who you should have on your show.
Yes,
He's
absolutely.
another big link between us.
Yeah.
He, in the sort of the footer of every email he sends, is that beautiful quote from Leonard Bernstein about, you know, we must make music more fervently than ever before, however it goes in times of war. And you know, the tour that I'm about to embark on this summer, after I do this Under the Canopy tour, is called the Joy Equals Resistance Tour. So
Oh, I like that.
I'll be
Great.
doing that with some other peer artists, including the fabulous Kristen Ford, who's on Righteous Babe Records. And it was, you know, her idea to do a tour like that. And I was just so right there because I thought, well, you know, we'll go into all of these pockets of panic and just try to create some joy, some peace, and,
Yeah.
you know, some resolve.
So it's going to be a U.S. tour.
A U.S. tour, yeah. We'll be
Great.
starting it in a handful of shows in June, mostly July, September, and October.
Very cool.
Listener, go to these shows.
And check out her music. We're going to have a link in the bio and on the website. So definitely
great.
check it out.
Yeah, but I have a feeling it's really fun to watch you in person. I mean, just watching your videos is like, this is fun. I love
Yeah.
this person. It's like, there's a
Great
there there.
energy.
There's something going on.
Yeah.
I was going to say earlier too. It's interesting that that you said growing up that your parents like played Broadway shows. Like, yeah, that was the big thing, right? A record. Like you'd see South Pacific, and then you'd buy the record.
And
you'd
Saturday
play
Night
South
Fever.
Pacific.
It was a healthy mix.
Oh, that's a good mix. Yeah. But that there's something interesting to learn that early on that you can tell a story with music.
Oh, yeah,
And you really get
absolutely.
that, especially from a Broadway show. I mean, I guess if your household plays classical music all the time, perhaps you might think, oh, there's something going on here. But with musical theater, it's all story. It's
true,
always
yeah.
a story. And then,
I try to remember that more because I do have this very kind of cryptic, abstract side of my brain. And I was more like that in my teens and 20s, and especially in college when you just have all these feelings and they're coming out just with words, and it's not necessarily a story. And then the older I've gotten, the much more story driven my aesthetic has become. And I credit that mainly to being part of the folk scene where, you know, you get up in front of a group of peers and you not only is your song a story, but you're also kind of expected to tell a little spiel, a little story about the song. So even if you have to make one up,
yeah,
it kinda
little
ties it all
embellishing
together.
never hurt. Yeah.
And
I don't
it's
mind,
true.
yeah.
Your songs used to be very cryptic.
they did. I was pretty
Yeah.
weird back in the day.
Yeah.
Some of the early tunes, if I listened to them now, I'd be like, oh no, like, is she okay? Like, what was going on? And now I think I write from much more of a place of how can I offer some solace through a song? And then I think I needed the offering maybe a little bit more. But that's the journey. That's what growing up is all about, right? How do we become someone who is, kind of sharing some perspective from being someone who is, I don't want to say flailing, but, just really seeking, searching early on.
Come to me and hold my hand. You don't have to understand. You just have to stand under my canopy. Come to me with open heart. You don't have to even start. You just have to want to heal insanity.
Hey, thanks for checking this out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.